What's going on, everyone? So, you may have heard by now. If not, go check out the full video breakdown after this video, of course. But we are expected to be getting a new The Mummy movie. Now, it does appear like it's not going to be a continuation, that it's going to be kind of its own adaptation of The Mummy, and that it is expected to be released in 2026. I'm excited for this. It's going to be a Lee Cronin style film. Again, don't want to go too much into the ins and outs because I already did a full video breakdown, but I'm excited for it. I really am a fan of the Mummy series. Obviously, we are in the Brennasaunce, right? Brendan Fraser coming back and doing films and stuff again. I think that this is a real opportunity. However, if this is a new adaptation of The Mummy rather than like a sequel or like a continued story or whatever, I do think that, it could be a disservice in a bit of a way, right? One, more than anything, if you're going to do a new Mummy movie and you're going to make a new Mummy movie, it has to be good, right? Like, the first two in particular were excellent, right? They were great, just suspense, horror, whatever you want to classify those Mummy movies, action style, Indiana Jones type of films. They're classics. They're great. And, they've tried to remake several times. They made that third one with Brendan Fraser and them, which it wasn't bad. Like, I didn't hate it, but it also, in my opinion, wasn't the first two. Let me know your thoughts down in the comments. Do you kind of like the trilogy as a whole, or do you think that the third one was a little bit of a lackluster film? I just felt like it was a little lackluster, but nonetheless, right? Then they followed that up with that Tom Cruise The Mummy, which was it was terrible. It was just not a good film, in my opinion. And I mean, based on the lack of success, it tells you that, the consensus was this wasn't a good movie, because if it was, it would have had the box office success. And it isn't one of those films that like did really bad in box office and then, years later ended up becoming a cult classic or something like that. No, like it wasn't good. It wasn't a good movie, which is my fear, right? Because I say it all the time. Not all movies need to be remade. Not all movies need to be, have sequels or legacy sequels or whatever, right? Like, some franchises, it's okay to just leave alone, right? Some franchises are good enough as is. And I don't want to see them create another lackluster Mummy film that's just disappointing, and we're all just like, well, what was the point of that? I do like the idea of kind of taking a Mummy level story and kind of modernizing it, right? Because you can just get away with a lot more. Also, special effects and practical effects and things like that are just so much better now than they were back then. And even like the first two Mummies were a form of like horror, right? I mean, you have Emotep like literally like sucking the life force out of people and turning and killing people, turning them into mummies themselves. And you have, the Scorpion King, which that CGI was just awful. And then, you have all these like horror elements and scary moments and stuff that I think you could really kind of adapt into modern times and just make for a very new, better film for the time. Again, like, they're classics, so I don't mean better in the sense of like they're gonna outdo those films. I mean just like, again, the effects, the things that you're capable of doing now compared to back then, the things that you can get away with now compared to back then. I do think that there is some room for like, oh, you have an opportunity to make a really good film here. However, whatever they decide to do, right, they need to have Brendan Fraser in that film, right? Like, I don't want him, though. Here's the thing. I want him in the film. I do not want them to make this a film where he's some like other character or something, right? Like, he needs to stay the same character, and you find out a way to incorporate it, right? Obviously, he's probably a little too old at this time to be chasing down mummies and, fighting to the death against, these other type of mummies and stuff. Like, I don't want to see anything like that. But I do think you need to have Rick O'Connell in this film one way or another, right? Now, you could, if you wanted to, bring back all the legacy people if you really wanted to, right? So like you could have, Evelyn and, Jonathan in them if you wanted to. But I think bare minimum, you have to have Rick O'Connell in some form, some capacity, whatever it is. I mean, he could be the historian that just retired and is just kind of he's rich and just still has the fascination in archaeology and the history and all that stuff, right? Because I mean, even Brendan Fraser, he's 56, right? So no, I would like to see something where you have Brendan Fraser incorporated into this story, some shape or form, right? I'm not expecting him to be this huge prominent character, or like I said, him running around like they bring back Emo Temp and like I think the Emo Temp story is good, finished, fine. You saw how it ended. Kind of have a new type of mummy, have a new type of story or whatever. But you gotta have Brendan Fraser in some capacity, right? Like I feel like it would be a disservice in a lot of ways, right? Like I'm not saying that this has to be like a legacy sequel or anything like that, right? Like that's the trend right now, right? Like that's the thing that everyone's doing now. Everyone's like bringing back the classic characters and telling a new story and having them involved, and it more often than not is just like a horrible disaster, especially in the horror space, which again, this is kind of more action adventure, but I imagine that they're probably going to have, I think it'll still be an action adventure, but I do think it'll be kind of like a little more leaning towards horror, but we'll see. I mean, obviously we don't know. It's all just kind of speculation and thought at this time, or at least at the time of recording this video. It's very possible we could get new details and information, and I'm sure things are going to kind of come trickling in as we sort of move towards the development of this film and all that stuff. But my concern is that, again, like they're all like, how do you get them involved into the story to where it does service and justice for their characters? I don't really think that that's something, like I said, I think you keep it simple. You have them. I mean, Evelyn was like a big, history buff when it came to ancient Egypt and stuff. And then you find out about, the past lives and all that stuff, right? Like, I just think that that's how you do it, right? Have something to where, Rick and Evelyn own a museum or something, right? Like they, in the third one, they had like the bar or John, no, that was Jonathan's bar, right? But, they were still doing like work and stuff like that and digging up stuff. Like maybe they're like funding projects, right? Or maybe they're the cause of the mummy to come, right? And they're kind of like the guru, the Yoda type thing, right? Like there's other ways that you can be creative. There's ways that you can kind of implement them into this film in some capacity and have it be its own thing, but still tie into the classics. So it is kind of one overarching story, one overarching universe, one kind of, continued story, but it's its own thing. Like the third one was its own thing, but it's still tied in. Like it didn't take away from, what Rick and Evelyn did, and, Brendan Fraser didn't play a different character, and Evelyn, and, who was it? Rachel Weisz, I think, was the one that played Evelyn. I know that they like switched it, if I'm not mistaken. So I think she played it in one of them, and I don't remember off the top of my head who played it again. It might have been her twice, but I think that they changed it. But again, I could be wrong. Nonetheless, right? Point is you got to have Brendan Fraser in this film. You got to have him in this film in some capacity, in some way. I feel like it'd be a real disservice, especially, like I said, with the new, like, Brennasaunce and, him back into acting and people just really embracing him, and he's winning awards and he's doing all this stuff. And I just think to have this mummy film and have the guy that's most recognized to, like, whenever you think of Brendan Fraser, like, that's the first movie that pops into your head is The Mummy, right? Like, that's the thing that, like, really, like, put him on. I mean, he was in other stuff, he was in other movie stuff, but, like, that was the thing that, like, made him an icon in a lot of ways, right? And his character and the stories and stuff were just so iconic. I think that you have to kind of do right in this upcoming installment by having him involved again, in some capacity. I'm not expecting him to be in, 50% of the film or anything like that. Even if it's just like a little cameo role, a little 5-minute scene or whatever, or, sprinkled scenes throughout, whatever. Right? Especially in modern times, maybe you have phones and stuff like that. So, you call him and he picks up the phone, or however you want to go about it, however you want to approach it. But I do think you need to have him in this film. But anyway, as always, this is a discussion. Pass the question on to you. Let me know your thoughts and opinions down in the comments below. What do you think? Hey, Phil, what are your thoughts? Do you agree? Do you think that, yes, you need to have Brendan Fraser in this film in some capacity? Do you think that, yes, he needs to be involved? You can't have this film without him. Do you want all kind of the legacy characters? Do you not care either way? Do you want this to kind of, no, just make this be its own thing, its own story, its own everything? Again, however you feel, whatever your thoughts are. Either way, love to hear it. Let me know down in the comments below. That being said, if you haven't liked this video, hit that like button. Helps me a lot. So we enjoy these types of videos, and I truly appreciate it. Not subscribe channel, hit that subscribe button. Turn on the bell notifications. Appreciate y'all. See you in the next one.